Welcome to Luxury and Adventure Stories, where elegance meets drama, and every story takes you deep into the world of wealth, power, secrets, and unforgettable journeys. Please subscribe and turn on your notification bell for more stories. Like and share as we dive into today's story. The sun blazed over Kibera, Nairobi's largest slum, where the air hummed with the chaos of life. Boda-bodas zipped through narrow, dusty paths, dodging vendors hawking roasted maize and second-hand clothes. The scent of Nyama Choma mingled with the rhythmic beats of shung-laced Afrobeat blasting from a nearby radio. James Muriuki, 26, a charismatic boda driver, leaned against his worn motorbike at the edge of the slum, wiping sweat from his brow. His faded denim jacket and easy smile hid the weight of his struggles. Long days ferrying passengers to scrape together a living in a city that favored the rich. Today, fate had other plans. A sleek Mercedes-Benz, out of place in Kibera's gritty streets, rolled up with a sputtering engine. Grace Wanjiku, 23, stepped out, her designer sundress and polished demeanor a stark contrast to the chaos around her. She was the daughter of Victor Kamau, a telecom tycoon whose name adorned Nairobi's skyscrapers. Grace, a university student, had been heading to Westlands for a charity event when her driver, flustered, admitted the car was dead. James, spotting the chance for extra cash, approached with a grin. "Car trouble, miss? I can take a look." Grace shielded her eyes from the sun, nodded. "Please, we're stuck and I'm late." He popped the hood, his skilled hands moving with ease. As he worked, Grace watched, intrigued by his confidence. "You're good at this," she said, her voice soft but curious. James chuckled, glancing up. "Gotta be. This bike's all I've got. Name's James, by the way." "Grace," she replied, a small smile breaking through her polished facade. Their eyes met and something unspoken sparked, a connection that felt dangerous yet exhilarating. Within 20 minutes, the car roared back to life. Grace's driver handed James a few crumpled shillings, but she slipped him an extra 500 shilling note. "For being a lifesaver," she said, her smile lingering. James pocketed the money, his heart racing. "Anytime, Grace. You ever need a ride, I'm in Kibera." She laughed, a sound like music. "I'll remember that." That evening, James couldn't shake Grace's face from his mind. He rode to Uhuru Park, a green oasis in Nairobi's heart, where he often went to clear his head. To his surprise, Grace was there, sitting on a bench, her driver parked nearby. She looked less like an heiress now, in a simple hoodie, sketching in a notebook. "Fancy seeing you here," James said, parking his bike. "What's a Westlands girl doing in my park?" Grace looked up, startled but pleased. "Your park? I come here to escape. Too much noise at home." James sat beside her, keeping a respectful distance. "Escape? You've got a mansion, fancy cars. What's to run from?" She sighed, closing her notebook. "Expectations. My dad want me to be perfect. Perfect grades, perfect friends, perfect future husband. It's suffocating." James nodded, understanding more than she knew. "I get it. In Kibera, it's survive or sink. But you keep going, you know?" Their conversation flowed effortlessly, from Nairobi's chaos to their dreams. James shared his hope of owning a garage someday. Grace confessed her love for art, a passion her father dismissed. As the sun set, casting golden hues over the park, James felt a pull he couldn't ignore. "Grace, I'm just a guy from Kibera," he said, his voice low. "You're way out of my league." Grace's eyes softened, her hand brushing his. "Leagues don't matter, James. You make me feel alive." Their moment was interrupted by Lillian Mwangi, 24, Grace's best friend and a social media influencer with a knack for drama. Lillian, in a bold encore dress, strutted over, her phone already recording. "Grace Wanjiku, is that you with a boda guy?" she teased, her voice loud enough to draw stares. Grace blushed, pulling her hand back. "Lillian, stop. This is James. He fixed my car today." Lillian raised an eyebrow, smirking. "Fix your car, huh? Looks like he's fixing your heart too. Don't worry, my lips are sealed." She winked, pocketing her phone. James laughed unfazed. Better keep that promise, Miss Influencer. Lillian grinned. Oh, I like you. But Grace, your dad would flip. Be careful. As Grace left with Lillian, James watched her go, his heart full. That night, Lillian posted a cryptic X update. Asterisk, saw a rich girl with a slum guy. Tease brewing. Hashtag Nairobi love. Asterisk the post, vague but juicy. Racked up thousands of likes, with users speculating about Nairobi's mystery couple. Hashtags like hashtag Nairobi love began trending, setting the stage for a viral storm. Over the next week, James and Grace met secretly at Uhuru Park, sharing mandatsi and stories under the stars. Their chemistry grew, each meeting a rebellion against the class divide. Grace, captivated by James's authenticity, felt free for the first time. James, smitten, dared to dream of a future with her, despite the odds. One night, as they sat by the park's fountain, Grace leaned closer. James, I don't care what anyone thinks. I want to be with you. James's heart soared, but doubt lingered. Your family won't accept me, Grace. I've got nothing to offer. You've got everything, she said, her voice fierce. You've got heart. That's enough. They sealed their pact with shy kiss, unaware that Lillian, snapping photos from afar, was already planning her next X-post. The spark in Kibera had ignited a flame that would soon set Nairobi ablaze. Victor Kamal's mansion in Westlands was a fortress of wealth, its marble floors and chandeliers a world away from Kibera's dust. Victor, 52, a telecom tycoon with a reputation for ruthlessness, ruled his empire and his family with an iron fist. His wife, Esther, 48, elegant in a tailored suit, was his perfect counterpart, her cold demeanor masking a loyalty to status. Their daughter, Grace, was their pride, groomed for a life of elite connections. James, driven ascending the Boda through Kibera's muddy paths, he'd scraped together every shilling for a modest silver ring, its tiny stone a symbol of his love for Grace. With his heart pounding, he approached the mansion, his faded jeans and worn shirt a stark contrast to its opulence. A security guard eyed him warily, but let him in after James insisted he had an appointment. In Victor's study, lined with mahogany and gold-framed awards, James stood tall, clutching the ring box. Victor sat behind a massive desk, his eyes narrowing. Esther stood beside him, her lips pursed. Sir, ma'am, James began, his voice steady despite his nerves. My name's James Muriuki. I love your daughter, Grace. I want to marry her. I know I'm not rich, but I'll work hard to make her happy. Victor's laugh was sharp, cutting through the silence. You? A Boda driver? Marry my daughter? He leaned forward, his gaze icy. Boy, you're dreaming. Grace is meant for someone of her class, a doctor, a politician, maybe Brian Mutua, the MP's son. Not a nobody from Kibera. Esther's voice was cold, her words precise. You're bold, I'll give you that. But Grace's future is set. She's not for you. Leave, before you embarrass yourself further. James's chest tightened, but he held his ground. I love her, sir, he said, his voice firm. And she loves me. Isn't that worth more than your money? Victor stood, towering over James. Worth more? You can't even afford her shoes. Grace deserves a man who can give her the world, not a slum rat scraping by. Get out and stay away from my daughter. James's hand clenched around the ring box, his pride warring with his pain. I'm not after your money, he said, his voice low. I just want her to be happy. Happy? Esther scoffed, her eyes narrowing. You think dragging her to Kibera will make her happy? You're delusional. Before James could respond, Grace burst into the room, her face flushed. She'd overheard everything from the hallway, her heart breaking at her parents' cruelty. Papa, stop, she cried, her voice fierce. James is a good man, better than anyone you'd choose for me. I don't care about your money. I want him. Victor's face hardened, his voice like steel. You'll do as I say, Grace. This boy's nothing. You're forbidden from seeing him again. Esther stepped forward, her tone softer but firm. Grace, think of your future. This infatuation will pass. Brian Mutua's family is coming tomorrow to discuss your engagement. It's settled. Grace's eyes welled with tears, but her defiance burned. "You can't control my heart," she said, her voice shaking. "I love James, and I'll fight for him." Victor pointed to the door. "Enough. James, leave. Grace, to your room. This discussion is over." James met Grace's gaze, a silent promise passing between them. He left, the ring heavy in his pocket, his resolve stronger than ever. Grace, confined to her room, stared out her window, her mind racing. She wouldn't marry Brian. She'd find a way to be with James, no matter the cost. That night, Grace posted on X from a secret account. Asterisk, "Love isn't for sale. I choose my heart." Hashtag my heart, my choice. Asterisk the post, raw and defiant, spread like wildfire, with users rallying behind hashtag Team Grace. Comments flooded in, "Who's the guy?" "Rich girl, poor boy." "Iconic." And the hashtag trended across Nairobi. Lillian amplified it, retweeting with a heart emoji, ensuring the story gained traction. Back in Kibra, James read Grace's post on a borrowed phone, his heart swelling. He texted her, asterisk, "We'll find a way. I love you." Asterisk, the forbidden proposal had failed. But their love was far from over. Nairobi was watching, and the stage was set for a romance that would shake the city. The Nairobi night market buzzed under skies smeared with stars, its air thick with the smoky aroma of Nyama Choma sizzling on open grills. Stalls glowed with strings of fairy lights, their vendors calling out in Shung, a vibrant mix of Swahili and English that danced off their tongues. Grace, her face partially hidden under a hooded jacket, weaved through the crowd, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and exhilaration. Beside her, James kept his head low, his cap pulled down to shield his sharp features. The market was their cover, a chaotic sea of hawkers, bargain hunters, and late-night revelers where they could blend in unnoticed. They slipped into a narrow alley behind a stall selling roasted maize, the noise of the market muffled by stacks of crates and the hum of a generator. Grace leaned against the wall, catching her breath, her eyes scanning the shadows for any sign they'd been followed. James stood close, his hand brushing hers, a silent reassurance. "James, we can't keep sneaking around like this," Grace said, her voice low but firm. "I'm tired of hiding. Let's run. Anywhere, as long as we're together." James's jaw tightened, his eyes searching hers. "It's risky, Grace. You'll lose everything. Your family, your money, your whole life." Grace stepped closer, her voice softening but resolute. "You're my everything." For a moment, they stood in silence, the weight of her words hanging between them. James ran a hand through his hair, his mind racing. He wanted to protect her, to keep her safe from the fallout of such a reckless plan, but the fire in her eyes told him she wasn't backing down. "Okay," he said finally, exhaling, "but we need a plan. Fake IDs, cash, a place to go. This isn't a game." Grace nodded, her lips curving into a determined smile. "I know. That's why we're here." They moved deeper into the alley, where Peter, James's childhood friend, waited. Peter leaned against a crate, his lanky frame illuminated by the glow of his phone. He was a fixer, the kind of guy who knew people who knew people. His easy grin faded when he saw the seriousness on James's face. "Bro, you sure about this?" Peter asked, pocketing his phone. "Running off with an heiress? That's next-level trouble." James shot him a look. "I didn't ask for your opinion, Peter. Can you get the IDs or not?" Peter raised his hands in mock surrender. "Chill, man. I got you. 2 clean IDs, new names, new lives. But it'll cost. You got the cash." Grace stepped forward, pulling a small envelope from her jacket. "Here's half. You get the rest when we have the IDs." Peter took the envelope, peeking inside at the stack of shillings. He whistled softly. "All right, heiress. You're serious. Give me 3 days. Meet me at the usual spot." As Peter slipped away into the market's chaos, Grace turned to James, her eyes bright with hope. "This is it, James. Our way out." But James's expression was clouded. "It's not just about IDs, Grace. Your dad's got eyes everywhere. And my mom, she's been acting weird, warning me about some family secret." Grace frowned. "What kind of secret?" James shook his head. "She won't say." Just keeps telling me be careful, like she knows something bad's coming. Across the market, Vanessa, a sharp-eyed journalist with a nose for scandal, lingered near a stall selling beaded bracelets. Her phone was in hand, her fingers poised over the screen as she typed out a thread on X. Heiress planning a bolt? Spotted in the night market with a mystery guy. Hashtag Nairobi scandal. She'd been tailing Grace for weeks, sensing a story that could blow up. The market's buzz was perfect cover for her snooping, and her instincts told her she was close to cracking something big. Meanwhile, in a quieter corner of the market, Lillian, Grace's cousin and secret ally, sat at a small table with a burner phone. She was the only one in Grace's family who supported her rebellion, and she'd been quietly funneling money from her own savings to fund the escape. Her fingers trembled as she wired another payment to an untraceable account, her mind racing with the risk she was taking. If her uncle, Grace's father, found out, she'd be cut off, or worse. "Lillian, what are you doing?" A voice snapped, making her jump. It was Mary, James's mother, standing with a basket of vegetables, her eyes narrowed. Lillian quickly pocketed the phone, forcing a smile. "Just checking messages." "What's up, Annie?" Mary wasn't fooled. She stepped closer, her voice low. "I know you're helping them, Lillian. You think you're doing good, but you don't know the half of it. There's things about our family, about James's father, that could put them in real danger." Lillian's smile faltered. "What are you talking about?" Mary hesitated, her eyes darting around the crowded market. "Not here. Just tell Grace to watch her back. And tell James, tell him his father's past isn't as buried as he thinks." As Mary walked away, Lillian's heart sank. She wanted to believe she was helping Grace find freedom, but Mary's warning gnawed at her. She pulled out her phone again, hesitating before sending Grace a cryptic text. "Be careful. There's more at play than you know." Back in the alley, Grace's phone buzzed, but she ignored it, her focus on James. "Whatever your mom's hiding, we'll figure it out together. But we can't stay here, James. We have to go." James nodded, pulling her into a quick embrace. 3 days. Then we're gone. As they slipped back into the market's crowd, Vanessa's X-thread was already gaining traction, likes and retweets piling up. The hashtag Nairobi scandal trended locally, and whispers of an heiress's rebellion began to spread. 3 days later, Nairobi's neon-lit streets pulsed with life. Matetas honked, their colorful bodies weaving through traffic, while skyscrapers glowed against the night sky. Grace stood in her bedroom, the mansion around her silent, except for the hum of the security system. Her heart raced as she typed the code into the control panel, disabling the cameras and alarms. Her hands shook, but her resolve was ironclad. She grabbed a small backpack, stuffed with clothes, cash, and the fake IDs Peter had delivered, and slipped out through a side door. Outside, James waited on his boda, the motorcycle's engine idling softly. His cap was pulled low, his eyes scanning the street for any sign of trouble. Grace climbed on behind him, wrapping her arms tightly around his waist. "You ready?" James asked, his voice steady despite the knot in his stomach. "More than ever," Grace replied, her breath warm against his neck. "Let's go." The boda roared to life, speeding through Nairobi's back streets, weaving past late-night vendors and drunken pedestrians. Grace's heart soared as the city blurred around them, the weight of her old life falling away with every mile. They ditched the motorcycle at a bus station, where a battered coach bound for Mombasa waited, its driver shouting for passengers. On the bus, Grace and James sank into seats at the back, their hands intertwined. The fake IDs, Grace now Sarah and James now Michael, felt like a fragile shield against the world they were leaving behind. As the bus rumbled out of Nairobi, Grace leaned her head on James's shoulder, the neon lights fading into the distance. "We're free, James," she whispered, her voice trembling with joy. "No more cages." James squeezed her hand, but his eyes stayed sharp, scanning the other passengers. "Free, but hunted. We've got to stay sharp." Grace nodded, her excitement tempered by his caution. "What do you think they'll do when they find out?" "Your dad? He'll tear the country apart to find you," James said grimly. "And my mom, she'll be worried sick, but she won't talk. Not after her warnings. Grace frowned, remembering Lillian's cryptic text from a night market. Lillian said something weird too, about being careful, like there's some bigger secret. James's jaw clenched. Yeah, my mom hinted at the same thing. Something about my dad's past. But right now, we focus on staying ahead. Mombasa's our hideout. We lay low, figure out our next move. The bus rolled through the night, its headlights cutting through the darkness as it headed toward the coast. In Mombasa, they'd find a cheap room, blend into the tourist crowds, and plan their future. But back in Nairobi, the storm was already brewing. At the mansion, Victor, Grace's father, stood in her empty bedroom, his face a mask of fury. A note lay on her bed, written in Grace's neat handwriting. I'm sorry, Dad. I need to live my own life. Don't look for me. Victor crumpled the paper, his voice cold as he called for his assistant. Get David on the phone. I want her found. Now. David, a private investigator with a reputation for finding anyone, was already on the case by dawn. He combed through security footage, bribed bus station clerks, and followed the faint trail left by Grace and James. Victor's wealth ensured no stone would be left unturned. Meanwhile, Lillian, racked with guilt and fear, sat in her own room, her phone open to X. She'd been the one to leak the story, hoping the public attention would force Victor to back off. Her fingers hovered over the screen before she uploaded a shaky video of Grace's empty room. Her voice hushed. She's gone. Grace ran away for love. Hashtag love on the run. The video exploded online, racking up thousands of views within hours. Ex-users shared it with heart emojis, debates about love versus duty, and wild theories about where the couple had gone. The hashtag love on the run trended nationwide, turning Grace and James into folk heroes for some and reckless fools for others. On the bus, Grace's phone buzzed with notifications, but she'd turn it off, knowing it could be tracked. She didn't see Lillian's video or the growing frenzy online. All she saw was James, his profile sharp against the window, and the open road ahead. For the first time, she felt truly alive. James, though, couldn't shake the unease gnawing at him. When we get to Mombasa, we ditch these phones, he said quietly. New ones, prepaid. No traces. Grace nodded, her hand tightening around his. Whatever it takes. We're in this together. As the bus crossed into Mombasa's outskirts, the first hints of dawn touched the sky, painting it in shades of pink and gold. The coastal air carried the promise of freedom, but also the shadow of pursuit. Grace and James escaped Nairobi, but the world they left behind was closing in, fueled by viral hashtags and a father's wrath. Mombasa's old town was a maze of narrow alleys, where coral stone buildings leaned close, their carved wooden doors whispering Swahili history. The air carried the tang of salt from the nearby Indian Ocean, mixed with the aroma of spiced chai from street vendors. Grace and James had found refuge in a cramped, rented room above a tailor shop, its single window draped with a faded curtain. The room was sparse, a mattress on the floor, a wobbly table, and a battered fan that barely stirred the humid air. But was theirs a fragile bubble of freedom. Grace stood by the window, peeking through the curtain at the bustling street below. She wore a loose headscarf, her new identity as Sarah, demanding caution. James sat on the mattress, counting their remaining cash, his brow furrowed. They'd been in Mombasa for a week, scraping by on odd jobs. Grace cleaning rooms at a nearby guest house, James running errands for a fishmonger. The fake IDs Peter had secured held up, but every knock on the door made their hearts race. We're down to a few thousand shillings, James said, stacking the notes. We need to stretch this until we can move again. Grace turned, her eyes bright despite the strain. We're making it, James. That's what matters. No one's found us yet. James managed a half smile, but his unease was clear. Yet, your dad's not the type to give up, Grace. And those ex-posts, they're keeping us in the spotlight. Grace sighed, sitting beside him. I know. Hashtag love on the run sounds romantic, but it's like a beacon for anyone looking. Their conversation was cut short by a sharp knock. James tensed, his hand reaching for a pocket knife he'd started carrying. Grace held her breath as James crept to the door, peering through a crack. Relief washed over his face as he opened it to reveal Peter, his lanky frame filling the doorway, a backpack slung over one shoulder. "Man, you gotta stop looking like you're about to stab someone," Peter said, grinning as he stepped inside. "It's just me." James shut the door quickly, locking it. "Can't be too careful." "What's up? You didn't text." Peter dropped his backpack on the table, his grin fading. "Had to come in person." David's sniffing around. "Man, that PI your dad hired, Grace? He's good. He's been asking questions at the Nairobi bus station, showing your pictures." Grace's stomach dropped. "How close is he?" "Not here yet," Peter said, "but he's got leads. You need to keep moving. Maybe head north to Malindi or Lamu." James ran a hand through his hair, frustration etched on his face. "We can't keep running forever, Peter. We're burning through cash, and every move risks exposure." Peter hesitated, glancing at Grace before leaning closer to James. "There's more, bro. Your mom's acting weird." James frowned. "Weird how?" "She's just a vendor." Peter shook his head, lowering his voice. "She's not just a vendor, man. She knows something big. I saw her talking to some guy in Nairobi. Looked like serious business. When I asked, she shut me down, says about your family." Grace's eyes darted between them. "What's that supposed to mean?" "James, what's she hiding?" James's jaw tightened, his mind racing back to Mary's cryptic warnings in the night market. "I don't know. She's been dropping hints about my dad's past, but she never says more. Now she's talking to some guy." Peter shrugged, pulling a water bottle from his backpack. "All I know is she's scared. Bro told me to tell you to watch your back, especially now that David's closing in." The room fell silent, the weight of Peter's words settling over them. Grace reached for James's hand, her voice steady despite her fear. "Whatever your mom's hiding, we'll face it together. But Peter's right. We need a plan. Maybe we save up for a boat to Zanzibar. Start fresh." James nodded, but his eyes were distant, wrestling with the mystery of his mother's secrecy. "Yeah, let's focus on staying ahead of David for now." As Peter left, promising to check in with more news, Grace and James sat in the dim room, the sound of Old Town filtering through the window. Children laughing, a muezzin's call to prayer, the clatter of a bicycle cart. But outside their bubble, trouble was brewing. Across town, Vanessa, the journalist who'd first sparked hashtag Nairobi scandal, sat in a beachfront cafe, her laptop open. Her latest expose on X had dug deeper, hinting at Victor's shady business deals, offshore accounts, bribes to local officials. The post had gone viral, but it came at a cost. Her phone buzzed with anonymous threats. "Stop digging or you're done." She ignored them, typing a new thread. "Victor's empire is crumbling. Is a runaway heiress the key?" Hashtag love on the run. Unbeknownst to Grace and James, a mysterious figure lingered in Old Town shadows, watching their building. The man, clad in a dark jacket, had been tailing them for days, his interest tied to James's past. His presence was no coincidence, and his motives were far from clear. On X, the couple's story took a new turn. Fan art of Grace and James as Kenya's Bonnie and Clyde flooded the platform. Sketches of them on a boda, fleeing under a starry sky. The hashtag love on the run trended higher, with users romanticizing their rebellion. But for Grace and James, the spotlight was a double-edged sword, drawing both admirers and hunters. The Mombasa beachfront shimmered under a late-afternoon sun, its white sand stretching toward the turquoise ocean. Grace and James walked along the shore, barefoot. Their jeans rolled up as waves lapped at their ankles. The salty breeze was a brief escape from their cramped room, but tension clung to them. They'd come to meet Mary, who'd arrived in Mombasa that morning, her cryptic message to James. "We need to talk now." Impossible to ignore. They found her at a quiet stretch of the beach, away from the tourist crowds. Mary stood near a palm tree, her face etched with worry, her market vendor's apron swapped for a simple dress. Her eyes softened as she saw James, but her hands fidgeted, betraying her nerves. "Ma, what's going on?" James asked, stopping a few feet away. Grace stood beside him, her arms crossed, sensing the gravity of the moment. Mary took a deep breath, her voice low. I've kept this from you too long, James. Your father, he wasn't just some guy. He was Victor's business partner, years ago. They built the empire together. James's eyes widened, his voice sharp. What? Victor? Grace's dad. Mary nodded, her gaze flickering to Grace, who stood frozen, processing the words. Your father, James, was a good man, but Victor betrayed him, cheated him out of his share. When your father died, Victor made sure you, and I got nothing. You're his illegitimate son, James. You have a claim to his legacy. James staggered back, the sand shifting under his feet. Why didn't you tell me, Ma? This changes everything. Mary's eyes brimmed with tears. I want to protect you. Victor's dangerous. If he knew you were a threat to his empire, he'd come for you. But now, with you and Grace running, it stirred things up. People are asking questions. Grace's mind reeled, her voice barely a whisper. James, you're tied to my family? My dad did this to you. James turned to her, his face a mix of anger and confusion. I didn't know, Grace. I swear, all this time, I thought my dad was just a nobody who left us. Mary stepped closer, her voice urgent. He wasn't a nobody. He was a partner, and Victor stole your inheritance. That's why Damien's watching you. Damien? Grace cut in, her heart racing. The guy who's been tailing us? Mary nodded grimly. He worked for your father, James. He's loyal to his memory. But I don't know what he wants. He's been in Nairobi, digging into Victor's deals. James clenched his fists, the revelation crashing over him. So what am I supposed to do, Ma? Fight Victor? Claim some legacy I never knew about. Mary grabbed his arm, her voice fierce. You stay alive, that's what. You and Grace keep running. Victor's already got David hunting you. If he finds out who you are, it's over. Grace's head spun, the weight of her father's sins pressing down. She reached for James's hand, her voice trembling but resolute. We'll figure this out, James. I don't care who your dad was or what mine did. We're in this together. James met her eyes, his anger softening slightly. Yeah, together. As they stood on the beach, the sun dipping toward the horizon, the world beyond Mombasa was closing in. Back in Nairobi's slums, Brian, a jealous rival of James's from his Boda Boda days, saw a chance to cash in. He'd been feeding rumors to tabloids, painting James as a gold digger and Grace as a naive heiress. His latest call to a gossip outlet was blunt. James is trouble. He's using her. I got proof. The proof was fabricated, but it spread like wildfire on X, muddying the couple's story. Vanessa, undeterred by the threats against her, posted a new thread from a Nairobi cafe. Is James more than a Boda Boda guy? Sources say he's tied to Victor's empire. Hashtag love on the run. The post sparked a frenzy of theories, some calling James a secret heir, others dismissing it as drama. The hashtag surged again, with ex-users debating whether James was a victim or a schemer. On the beach, Grace and James were oblivious to the online storm. Mary hugged her son tightly, her voice a whisper. I'm sorry I kept this from you. Just promise me you'll be careful. James nodded, his jaw set. I will, Ma, but I need answers. If Damien's watching us, I'm going to find out why. As Mary left, heading back to a friend's house in Mombasa, Grace and James lingered by the water. The bombshell about James's father had shaken them, but also forged a new resolve. They weren't just running from Victor now. They were running toward the truth. Victor's office in Nairobi towered over the city, a glass and steel fortress that screamed wealth and control. The room was stark, with dark-wood paneling and a massive desk cluttered with papers and a glowing laptop. Outside, the city skyline glittered, but inside, the air was thick with tension. Victor paced like a caged lion, his tailored suit rumpled, his face twisted with rage. Grace's escape had humiliated him, and the viral hashtag Love on the Run hashtag mocked his authority on X. He slammed a fist on the desk, rattling a glass of whiskey. She's my daughter, he roared, glaring at David, the private investigator lounging in a leather chair. You've had weeks, David. Where is she? David, lean and sharp-eyed, didn't flinch. His casual demeanor hit a calculating mind. Mombasa, last I checked. They're using fake IDs, moving fast. But I'm close. Got a lead on a room in Old Town. Victor's eyes narrowed. Close isn't good enough. I'm doubling your pay. Find her, drag her back, and make that Boda rat disappear. David raised an eyebrow, scribbling in a small notebook. Disappear? That's a tall order, Victor. You sure you want that kind of heat? Victor leaned forward, his voice low and venomous. I want my daughter back in this house, and that slum boy out of her life. Do whatever it takes. The door creaked open, and Esther, Victor's wife and Grace's mother, stepped in. Her face was drawn, her usual poise frayed by weeks of worry. She'd been silent through most of Victor's tirades, but something had shifted. She clutched the phone, her knuckles pale. Victor, enough? Esther said, her voice steady but sharp. We're losing her. Let her be happy. Victor spun to face her, incredulous. Happy? With that slum rat? Never. He's using her. Esther, you're blind if you can't see it. Esther's eyes flashed with defiance. Blind? I'm the only one seeing clearly. Grace loves him. She's not a child anymore. You can't chain her to your empire. Victor scoffed, waving a dismissive hand. Love? That's a fairy tale. She's throwing away her future for a nobody. Esther stepped closer, her voice softening but firm. She's not throwing away anything. She's choosing her life. If you keep hunting her, you'll lose her for good. Victor's face reddened, but before he could retort, David cleared his throat. Family drama's touching, but I've got work to do. I'll call when I have something. He stood, slipping out the door, his mind already on his next move, one Victor wouldn't like. In the hallway, David pulled out a burner phone and dialed Vanessa, the journalist who'd been hounding Victor's empire. Vanessa, it's me, he said, keeping his voice low. Victor's dirty deals? I've got receipts, offshore accounts, bribes, the works. Meet me tonight. Bring cash. Vanessa, holed up in a Nairobi cafe, grinned as she typed notes. Name the price, David. This'll bury him. Her fingers flew over her keyboard, drafting an ex-post. Victor's empire is rotten. Big reveal coming. Hashtag love on the run. She hit send, and the post racked up retweets, fueling the public's obsession with Grace and James. Back in Mombasa, Grace and James were unaware of the storm brewing in Nairobi. They'd left their Old Town hideout after a close call, a stranger asking questions at the guest house where Grace worked. Now, they crouched in a dimly lit internet cafe, its fans buzzing loudly. James scanned X on a borrowed laptop, his jaw tight as he read Lillian's latest post, a poll asking, should Victor let Grace go? Hashtag love on the run. The results were split, with thousands voting, some cheering the couple's rebellion, others calling Grace spoiled. This is bad, James muttered, closing the laptop. The more people talk, the easier it is for David to find us. Grace nodded, her headscarf slipping slightly. Lillian means well, but she's making it worse. We need to move again. They slipped out of the cafe, blending into Mombasa's evening crowds. But David was closer than they knew. He'd bribed a local vendor who'd seen them, and now he waited near the harbor where he'd set a trap. He'd tipped off a pair of hired thugs to watch the bus station, expecting Grace and James to flee by night. As the couple approached the station, Grace's instincts screamed danger. She grabbed James's arm, pulling him behind a stack of crates. Something's off, she whispered, pointing to two men lingering near the ticket counter, their eyes scanning the crowd. James cursed under his breath. David's guys. We can't stay here. They doubled back, taking a winding route through Mombasa's alleys to a friend's fishing boat. The friend, an old contact of James's, agreed to smuggle them to Lamu Island at dawn. As they hid in the boat's cramped hold, Grace's heart pounded, but she squeezed James's hand. We're still ahead, she said softly. James nodded, but his eyes were haunted. For now. In Nairobi, Esther sat alone in her bedroom. Her phone opened to Lillian's ex-poll. Her heart ached for Grace, and guilt gnawed at her for enabling Victor's hunt. She typed a quick message to Lillian on a secure app. They're in Mombasa, maybe heading north. Help them, but be quiet about it. She hit send, praying Lillian would keep the secret. Lillian, reading the message in her own room, felt a surge of hope. She didn't reply, knowing Victor might be watching, but she vowed to find a way to protect Grace and James. Her ex-poll kept trending, dividing fans and amplifying the saga, but she hoped it would by the couple time. Lamu Island was a world apart. Its narrow streets lined with donkey carts and whitewashed houses, the air heavy with the scent of mangoes and sea salt. Grace and James had arrived at dawn, their fishing boat dropping them at a quiet dock. They rented a tiny room in a guest house tucked behind a mosque, its walls adorned with faded Swahili poetry. The island's remoteness felt like a shield, but they knew it wouldn't last. They sat on a room's rooftop, the Indian Ocean sparkling under a midday sun. Grace leaned against James, her voice quiet. This place feels like a dream. Can we just stay here forever? James managed a small smile, but his eyes scanned the horizon. I wish. But David's still out there. And after what my mom said about my dad, I don't know who to trust. Their moment of peace shattered when a boy from the guest house ran up, breathless. Someone's asking for you at the dock. A woman says she's family. Grace's heart skipped. Family? That's impossible. They hurried downstairs, cautious but curious, and found Esther waiting at the dock, her face lined with exhaustion. She wore a simple dress, her usual elegance replaced by a mother's desperation. Grace froze, torn between shock and longing. Mama? Grace whispered, stepping forward. How did you find us? Esther's eyes filled with tears. Lillian helped. I had to see you, Grace. I've been wrong, siding with your father. I see it now, you love him. Grace's voice broke, her emotions spilling over. Mama, I love him. Why can't you see that? Esther reached for her, pulling her into a hug. I see it now, Grace. I'll make your father listen. But you need to come home. It's the only way to stop this. James stepped forward, his voice hard. Home? To Victor? He'll never let us be. Esther met his gaze, her tone earnest. I know what Victor did to your father, James. I'll fight for you, for both of you. But running won't end this. Before they could argue, shouts erupted from the street. David emerged, flanked by two men, his smirk cold. He'd tracked them to Lamu, following Esther's trail. End of the line, he called, advancing. James pushed Grace behind him, his pocket knife in hand. Stay back, David. David laughed, but his eyes flicked to Esther, then to a crowd gathering nearby. You're not just a boda guy, are you, James? Victor's late partner's son. That's a hell of a claim to his empire. Grace gasped, the pieces falling into place. You knew? David shrugged. Found out while digging. Thought I'd use it. But Victor's done. Vanessa's expose hit this morning. Across the continent, Vanessa's live X stream was breaking the internet. From Nairobi, she broadcasted a raid on Victor's company. Police swarming his office as evidence of corruption piled up. Her caption read, Empire crumbling. #Love on the run. The stream racked up millions of views, with users cheering the downfall of Victor's dynasty. On Lamu, the standoff escalated. Esther stepped between David and the couple, her voice commanding. Enough, David. You betrayed Victor already. Let them go. David hesitated, weighing his options. The crowd was growing, phones out, recording the scene. He cursed, signaling his men to back off. This isn't over, he muttered, retreating. Grace clung to James, her heart racing. Esther turned to them, her eyes pleading. Come back with me. We'll face Victor together. James shook his head, his voice firm. Not yet. We need time. Esther nodded, tears falling. I'll wait, but I'm on your side now. As Esther left the mainland, Grace and James returned to their guest house, the weight of David's words lingering. James's claim to Victor's empire was no longer a secret, and Vanessa's expose had shifted the game. On X, the world watched. The #Love on the Run. Hashtag now a symbol of rebellion and redemption. Uhuru Park in Nairobi buzzed with life, its green lawns dotted with families, vendors, and joggers under a golden afternoon sun. The park, a symbol of freedom, was an unlikely stage for a public reckoning. But today it was packed with reporters, onlookers, and TV crews. At the center, a makeshift platform held a single microphone. Where Victor stood, his once imposing figure humbled. His tailored suit hung looser now, his face lined with regret after weeks of scandal. His empire had crumbled under Vanessa's exposé, with corruption charges forcing him to face the truth. Today, he was here to beg for forgiveness, not just from Nairobi, but from his daughter, Grace. Grace and James watched from a nearby bench, hidden in the crowd. They returned to Nairobi that morning, drawn by Victor's televised plea to meet in the park. Grace wore a simple dress, her headscarf gone, her identity as Sarah no longer needed. James, in a clean shirt and jeans, kept his arm around her, his eyes scanning for threats despite the public setting. Their love had carried them through Mombasa and Lamu, but this moment felt like the final test. On the platform, Victor gripped the microphone, his voice unsteady but clear. "I've made mistakes," he began, the crowd quieting. "I built my wealth on lies, on greed. I hurt people, my partners, my city, my daughter." His voice cracked. "Grace, if you're watching, I was wrong. Come home, both of you." The words hit Grace like a wave. She dreamed of her father's apology, but hearing it now, raw and public, stirred a mix of pain and hope. She squeezed James's hand, her voice a whisper. "He means it, doesn't he?" James's jaw tightened, his trust in Victor thin. "Maybe, but we don't owe him anything, Grace. This is your call." Grace nodded, her eyes fixed on her father. The crowd murmured, some cheering, others skeptical, as TV cameras zoomed in. Behind Victor, Esther stood, her face soft with pride. She'd push him to this moment, her own shift in Lamu paving the way. Grace stood, her heart pounding. "Let's go to him. Not for him, for us." James rose with her, his hand steady in hers. They wove through the crowd, heads turning as people recognized them from ex-posts and news clips. Whispers of hashtag Love on the Run rippled around them. When they reached the platform, Victor's eyes widened, tears spilling as he stepped down to meet them. "Grace," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry." Grace's throat tightened, but she held her ground. "Papa, you hurt us. You hunted us. Why should we trust you now?" Victor's shoulders sagged, but he met her gaze. "Because I've lost everything that matters. My pride, my power. I don't want to lose you too. I was wrong about James, about everything. Please come home, both of you." Grace glanced at James, who gave a small nod, his expression guarded but open. She turned back to Victor, her voice firm. "We'll come, Papa, but on our terms. No more control. No more lies." Victor nodded, relief washing over him. "Anything you want, Grace. I swear it." Esther rushed forward, pulling Grace into a hug. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. "Both of you." The crowd erupted in cheers, phones flashing as people captured the reunion. James, still cautious, leaned close to Grace. "This feels too easy. What's next?" Grace smiled, her eyes bright. "We live, James. Really live." As the family stepped off the platform, Mary approached from the sidelines, her vendor's apron swapped for a neat blouse. She'd been working with lawyers, using old documents to prove James's claim as the son of Victor's late partner. Her testimony, shared with prosecutors, had secured James's inheritance, a stake in the empire Victor had stolen. She hugged James tightly, her voice low. "You're not a nobody anymore, son. You never were." James's eyes softened, gratitude mixing with disbelief. "Thanks, Ma, for everything." Nearby, Brian, James's old rival, watched from the crowd, his face sour. He'd tried to discredit the couple with lies, selling fake stories to tabloids about James's greed. But his schemes had backfired. Vanessa's reporting exposed as fabricated proof, and his credibility collapsed. He slipped away, ignored by the crowd, his jealousy a fading echo. That evening, James posted on X from a borrowed phone a photo of him and Grace in Uhuru Park, her head on his shoulder with the caption, "Love One." Hashtag Love on the Run. The post went viral, trending globally as users shared heart emojis, fan art, and messages of hope. The saga that began in Nairobi's night market had become a symbol of love's triumph over class and corruption. Nairobi's Arboretum was transformed into a vibrant wedding venue, its lawns draped with colorful kite-tinged fabrics and fairy lights. The air hummed with music, a mix of Benga, Tarab, and hip-hop, blending the grit of Kibra's slums with the polish of Nairobi's elite. James and Grace's wedding was a celebration of their journey, funded by James's restored inheritance, a fortune that leveled the divide between their worlds. Guests from Kibra mingled with city tycoons, their laughter rising over clinking glasses and the sizzle of Nyama Choma. Grace stood at the altar, radiant in a white gown with kite-tinged accents, her smile brighter than the sun overhead. James, in a tailored suit, couldn't take his eyes off her. His inheritance had given him wealth, but her love gave him purpose. The crowd hushed as the pastor began, but the couple's focus was only on each other. After the vows, they stepped into a quiet corner of the garden, the party's noise fading. James took Grace's hands, his voice soft. "We started with nothing, Grace. Now look at us." Grace laughed, her eyes sparkling. "We started with love. That's everything." James grinned, pulling her close. "You're right. But this wealth, this chance, it's ours to do something real with." Grace nodded, her voice earnest. "The charity for Kibra youth will give kids like you a shot at something better." Their plan, announced during the reception, was a foundation to fund education and jobs for Kibra's youth. It was their way of giving back, of turning their story into hope for others. The crowd cheered as James shared the vision, his arm around Grace, their love a beacon. Victor, seated at a front table, watched with a mix of pride and humility. His empire was rebuilding, leaner and honest, guided by James's sharp instincts and Grace's compassion. He'd stepped back, letting James take the lead, a mentor rather than a tyrant. When he stood to toast the couple, his voice was steady. "To Grace and James," he said, raising a glass. "You've taught me what matters. Love, truth, family." Esther, beside him, squeezed his hand, her smile warm. She'd become the couple's biggest ally, bridging the family's past and future. Lillian, ever the connector, live-streamed the moment on X, her phone capturing Victor's toast, the dancing crowd, and Grace and James swaying under the lights. Her caption read, "From Kibra to forever. Hashtag Love on the Run." The live stream exploded, racking up millions of views. X users shared clips of the wedding, from Grace's radiant entrance to James's speech about the charity. The hashtag Love on the Run, once a symbol of rebellion, now stood for redemption and unity. By midnight, a Netflix producer tweeted, pitching a series on Kenya's greatest romance. Who's in? Hashtag Love on the Run. The idea trended, with fans clamoring for a dramatized version of the saga. At the reception, Mary danced with James, her pride evident. "Your father will be proud," she whispered. "You're building something better than he ever did." James hugged her, his voice thick. "Couldn't have done it without you, Ma." Peter, now a trusted friend, toasted the couple with a grin. "From fake IDs to this, you two are legends." As the night wound down, Grace and James slipped away to a quiet bench, the city skyline glowing in the distance. They were no longer fugitives, no longer defined by class or secrets. They were partners, ready to shape a legacy of love and change. Grace rested her head on James's shoulder, her voice soft. "Think we'll ever miss running?" James chuckled, kissing her forehead. "Maybe a little, but this, us together, building something, it's worth more than any escape." Lillian's final X post went up as the stars emerged, a photo of the couple on that bench, their silhouettes framed by the Arboretum's trees. The world watched inspired, as Kenya's greatest romance became a story for the ages. Don't forget to hit subscribe, tap that like button, and share this video with your fellow drama lovers. New episodes drop weekly, and trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Let me know if you like this in a specific accent, style, e.g. vlog, narrator, luxury brand tone, or adapted to particular video.